Alexander the Great. Imagine a man who wept because conquering 2 million square miles wasn't enough for him. The glory seeker, Alexander the Great. His singular focus was on conquering the world. He led his army into battle without fear of defeat, acting as if he were immortal. After a decade of victories, his men, exhausted and longing for home and the luxuries they had earned, urged him to stop. But Alexander cared little for wealth or ruling. It was all about conquest. Everything was going well until he faced a formidable challenge in India. In a fierce battle against King Porus, he suffered wounds and lost many men, including his beloved horse. Despite their fatigue, he pushed his soldiers onward, facing another fresh Indian army across the river. His men begged him to end the campaign, but for once, he was compelled to listen. This marked the beginning of his decline. Known for his excessive drinking, he fell ill after a night of debauchery. As he lay gravely ill, his ambitious generals gathered to discuss the fate of his empire. When asked who should inherit it, he replied, "To the strongest." This sparked a brutal power struggle among them that lasted nearly 50 years, fragmenting the Macedonian Empire before it could truly form. Ultimately, for Alexander, it was never about Macedonia. It was solely about himself. He was eventually pronounced dead by physicians, and Greek historians noted that his body did not decompose for 6 days after death, claiming he was a god. However, modern scientists suggest he may have suffered from a neurological disorder that left him in a coma, possibly hearing the plots against him before being buried alive. Julius Caesar next. We have Gaius Julius Caesar, an admirer of Alexander. While Alexander wept for worlds yet to conquer, Caesar reportedly cried as he read about Alexander's exploits, lamenting that by his age, Alexander had defeated Darius while he had achieved nothing. Following Alexander's example, Caesar became self-obsessed and narcissistic. Once he gained significant power as a general and statesman, he undermined the Roman Republic and declared himself dictator perpetuo, dictator for life. He famously stated, "If you must break the law, do it to seize power. In all other cases, observe it." This declaration raised fears among senators that he aimed to establish a monarchy, eroding their authority. On March 15th, 44 BC, a group of 60 senators assassinated him during a Senate meeting, stabbing him 23 times to demonstrate their affection. The last sight he saw was that of his adopted son and trusted ally, Marcus Brutus, among his attackers, Genghis Khan. Moving into the medieval era, we find Genghis Khan overshadowing even the Crusaders. He conquered twice as much land as Alexander, determined to unify the world under his rule. Unlike Alexander or Caesar, he didn't see himself as a god or a messiah. He acknowledged his tyranny and boasted, "The greatest happiness is to scatter your enemy, to drive him before you, to see his cities reduced to ashes, to see those who love him shrouded in tears, and to take his wives and daughters." Accounts of his death vary. Some say he succumbed to the bubonic plague, others claim he was shot while on horseback, and another report suggests he was fatally castrated by a princess of the Western Shia Empire whom he had captured. His death remains shrouded in secrecy because he instructed his family to keep it hidden during a crucial phase of his conquests. Even in death, chaos followed him. His followers slaughtered everyone along the route of his funeral procession to maintain the secret. Napoleon Bonaparte. Fast forward 5 centuries, and we meet Napoleon Bonaparte, arguably the greatest conqueror. He thrived in an era transitioning from swords and spears to artillery, displaying unmatched genius in warfare. Although he became emperor in the name of defending revolutionary France, his ambitions reached far beyond that. Napoleon's personality was perhaps the most eccentric of the four conquerors. While Caesar saw himself as a messiah and Alexander as a god, Napoleon considered himself an artist of war. He famously said, "I love power, but it is as an artist that I love it." To him, the battlefield was a canvas, and he was the artist. His concentration and memory for details were extraordinary. During a campaign in 1805, he could recall the exact location of his divisions, their strengths, and his subordinates' records without needing maps. He achieved swift victories across Europe and the Mediterranean. But as the stakes grew higher, so did the death toll and brutality of battles. Ultimately, he was defeated at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815 and captured by British forces. Instead of execution, they placed him under house arrest in a dilapidated bungalow where he clung to illusions of grandeur. During dinner parties, he expected guests to don military attire while women wore evening gowns and jewels, wishing to maintain a sense of authority. Years of isolation took their toll, and he died on May 5, 1821, confessing his love for France, his army, and his wife, Josephine. Thus, the four great conquerors, Alexander, Caesar, Genghis Khan, and Napoleon, met their ends in different ways. One succumbed to illness, another was betrayed by his own, a third fell to an arrow, and the last died in captivity. Yet they all shared a common fate. They left this world longing for more.